UPS is now hiring part-time package handlers and seasonal driver helpers throughout Syracuse. Package handlers receive competitive pay, great benefits, and can also graduate debt-free with up to $25,000 in tuition assistance. Driver helpers also receive competitive pay and get picked up along their route every day. No license required. Apply now at jobs-ups.com/radio. That's jobs-ups.com/radio. A great job and excellent benefits are in one package, delivered by UPS. Get there at jobs-ups.com/radio.
Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Shadow Travels. Still without our intro music, but we will get there. Hey, Ray, how's it going?
Good, Kevin. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. And we have a really interesting show tonight, and we were saying it's one that we've been waiting a very long time to do until we found just the right guest, but I think that we have found that tonight. And it's a topic that, you know, we're very close to, especially in your sense, Ray. And, you know, that topic is psychic mediumship and spiritualism and, to an extent, tarot card reading. So tonight we have on Kathleen Meadows. She is a very, very prominent scholar, spiritualist, and psychic reader from Canada. So we're going to go ahead and bring her on right now. Good evening, Kathleen. Are you there?
I am, Kevin. Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me on this evening.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Sure thing. And my co-host Ray is on also with me.
Hi, Ray. Nice to meet you too.
Yes, great to meet you, Kathleen. I've read about you. I've checked out your bio and some of your online readings. I'm very excited to hear from you tonight.
Yes, I'm excited about being here. Always fun to talk to people about psychic stuff, especially other enthusiasts like myself.
Absolutely, for sure. And I don't know if you had heard, I was just speaking to Ray about how, you know, we've been on radio on our show since about mid-May, and we've been putting off this show and putting it off because we were waiting to find somebody who we really wanted to bring on with good credibility, and I definitely think that we found that with you after reading through all of your information. Well, sure, absolutely. I'm going to kind of take a bit of a backseat tonight with a lot of the questions for two reasons. The first reason is because I honestly don't know a whole lot about this, and I'd like to learn before I jump in and act like I know what I'm talking about. And the other reason is that Ray is actually our team's empath and psychic medium, so he will have infinitely more input, I think, into some of your perspectives, Kathleen, than I will. But if you'd like, could you kind of just start off talking about maybe how this all came to be with you, how you got involved in this?
Well, that's a really long story. I would say it began when I was really young. I was 12 years old, and I was having a game of chess with my cousin, who was then 8. And I was, of course, winning. And he said, stop cheating. And I said, what do you mean? I'm not cheating. And he said, well, you're reading my mind, and that's cheating. And I said, well, you do it too. And he said, well, no, I don't. I can't do that. And I said, yes, you can. He said, no, I can't. And it was quite a revelation to me. I mean, I really, at that age, had no idea that what I was doing, everybody wasn't doing all the time. So I went to my mother afterwards, and I told her about the conversation, and she said, yeah, you can do that. But she said, I wouldn't tell a lot of people because it makes people really uncomfortable. And I said, well, you do it too, right? She said, no, I don't. I can't do that. And so that was probably the most incredible sort of conversation I'd had in my whole life up to that point. And then at 14, I did tell someone about it. I told my best friend, my best girlfriend, that I could do that. And she was really excited with all the possibilities. And she said, read those. We had a crush, of course, on a bunch of guys. And she said, read their mind, find out where they are. And so I would. I'd kind of tap into what they were thinking and when they would be in a certain spot. And, of course, we would conveniently be there, too. And we'd bump into them and, of course, have our little, gathering, smoking cigarettes, all that stuff. And so that was this. And then my mother sort of jumped on the bandwagon by the time I was in my mid-teens. She was finding it a lot of fun, too, and she would get me to read people's minds, like, tell me what her name is, and I'd say what the girl's name was behind the counter, and she'd call out her name, and the girl would say, I don't know you, do I? And my mother would find that so much fun to do. So I guess that was my beginnings. Mm-hmm.
Did it ever scare you at that age? Were you ever, did it? I mean,
No.
because it's such a, it never made you uneasy, never, that's interesting.
I just thought
I'm trying to
was very normal. I really did. Wow. I thought everybody did it, and I thought it was really normal. And I really think what I really believe is that it is normal. I still to this day believe that it was, that was 50 years ago.
Right.
And I to this day believe it's normal. I think people do it all the time. I think people just don't trust it. They don't, they know they're doing it, but they don't really believe it. The people are always second-guessing themselves and thinking, no, that can't be right. And then when they find out they were right, they think, well, that's kind of weird, and then they just sort of throw it aside,
Right.
But I do think that everybody is psychic. Now, I think everybody has slightly different gifts, though. Just like some people are myopic, some people are slightly deaf, some people are, just highly sensitive in some things and kind of, head blind in others. I think psychic abilities are kind of similar. Some people are very gifted mediums, and some people are, telepaths, empaths, and other people are telekinetic, and so I don't think all of us are fully capable of all of the abilities all the time. I think all of us have our own particular thing that we're really gifted at, and other things so much. Mm-hmm.
That's a fantastic way of putting it. Ray, go ahead and jump in, please, at any time, because I'll probably just keep thinking of questions if you don't jump in and interrupt me.
So, Ray, when did you first come across psychic ability? What was your first experience?
I think the same thing, as a kid. I didn't have a ton of experiences, but thinking back, I had a variety of experiences, and it really wasn't until I was 15 years old when I had my first, I knew something was up moment. And that's when I had, I shared this before, I had communicated with my mother. We were sitting in the same vehicle, and it was just after my uncle, my mother's brother, had passed in a motorcycle accident. And I responded to her out loud verbally, and apparently she says, "What?" And she didn't say anything. She says, I didn't say that out loud, but I had responded to her. And ever since then, it's still today, 15 years later, I'm still learning and interpreting. And based on my experiences and speaking with people, and people like you that have done this much of your life, I guess it's always a learning experience.
Yeah, I agree.
So I love seeing,
It's always kind of amazing. It's always sort of, I have loads of aha moments. I think I'm so fortunate to do the work that I do because I come across it all the time on a daily basis. And I think I'm so privileged to have that kind of place in my life where people expect that of me, and I really think that has a lot to do with the development of the gift, is expectation. If you expect that you have it, and I always taught that in my psychic ability classes, so much of it has to do with that. If you believe that you have that gift and you start using it on a regular basis, it does, of course, get stronger. If you didn't think that you had an arm, and so therefore, you never used it, you'd have a kind of a weak, weird appendage hanging on the side of your body, wouldn't do anything until you came across somebody that said, oh, this moves actually. You can use this to do all kinds of things. Then you would use it and think, wow, well, look what I've been missing all my life. I think psychic ability is very much like that. If you expect that you can do it and it's there for your use and you start using it, the more you use it, the more validation it gets and the stronger and more accurate it gets. It's all about that, really, than it is about whether, some people have it and some people don't. Don't you think so?
Oh, absolutely. And I've had discussions, and even with different sessions or, tours we've had of different historic sites, it's something we talk about. We all have different abilities, and it's really about being open to it and accepting it. And, I teach my kids the same thing. That leads me into a question. Do you ever work with kids? Do you work on
I have.
So I know, kind of being the academic psychic, and I'm impressed. You have a master's degree in psychology and religion. You work as a teacher of the psychic sciences. I know you give lectures. You've taught at colleges. I'm curious, what's the youngest you've worked with?
I was invited to do a kind of barbecue party once, and there was all ages there. They had set me up in a tent in the backyard, and the kids, there was about, half a dozen kids, I guess, at this barbecue. And, of course, they started peering around the tent door at me, really curious about what I was about, sitting there at a table with, cards on the table. And they would say, what are you going to do? And I explained to them I would lay out some cards and then talk to them about them. And so they were really curious about this. And so one at a time they sat down across from me, and they started the readings, actually. The kids were far braver than the adults. And so it was really fun. I just said to them, just ask me anything. What would you like to know? And the kids would, have their own little questions about, were they going to like their teacher? When they started school in September, this was, of course, a barbecue in summer. And, so they had, kids' concerns, right? And whether what I thought they would think of their teacher, or if they were going to be in the same class with their best friend, or, like those kinds of things. It was really fun, actually. So I just worked with them at their level. Whatever was on their mind is kind of where we spun around, right? And they had a really good time. It was really hard, actually, to get them to make room for the adults.
That's great. Love hearing that. So Kevin and I both have backgrounds in education. I'm curious to know what your experience is with, being, for us, kind of being in the paranormal, and for me, being more also into the psychic world. There was a long time where I was very curious or concerned about what other people might think, because there are people who may look at us differently, or, they have their own beliefs that, I don't like to be judged without people really knowing who I am. So I'm curious how you deal with that, especially in terms of academia, thinking about, your years of experience. If you had any issues, maybe you haven't.
Well, I did, really, because I've been teaching tarot since 1990 is when I started teaching tarot. So I taught it for 20 years, from about 1990 to 2010. And when I did that, it was an evening course, of course, and I would do a few readings, mostly with students, or they would send their friends and family to come to me for a reading. And my day life was completely different. I was teaching. I did a lot of different sorts of social worky kind of projects, and I taught young people how to work with high-risk adolescents, and I did kind of work like that. So I had two almost like this kind of schizophrenic life where I had the day job, where I was known as a kind of academic type of social worker kind of thing, and then my evening stuff, and neither the two met. So I did that for quite a number of years, and of course didn't really make any money as a psychic. I mean, teaching my classes was really enough just to keep me in cards and books, really. Until I was finishing up a project. It was a 3-year project, and I got a call. I decided, my brother, how it all started professionally was my brother was studying how to build websites. And so he needed somebody to practice on, and like a model. So he said to me, how about if I build you a website? And I said, on what? And he said, well, like on your tarot. And I said, oh, that'd be great. That's a great idea. So it was an unbelievable amount of work. I don't think people have a clue. If you've never built a website, you have no idea how much work is involved. So when I saw him putting all this work and effort into it, I felt really bad, and I thought, well, we've got to at least have some people coming to, actually look at this thing. And so I called up the library, our local public library, and I said, how about if I do? Now, I'd done lectures with them before, years before. I had done lectures on, sort of psychic ability and that kind of stuff, just for fun. And so I thought, well, that would be a great way to maybe get some people to visit the website. So I called the library and said, how about if I do a couple of lectures on, women in psychic ability and women in the tarot and, feminism and spirituality and, that's my whole thing. So they said, oh, yeah, Kathleen, that sounds like fun, and they lined it up. And they send out press releases to the local media for their free lecture series. And so I got a call from a reporter, and she said, I noticed that you're doing this lecture at the library on women in psychic ability. And she said, it looks really interesting. I'm a reporter, and I'd like to, do an article piece on it. And I said, okay. So she wanted to meet me, and I grabbed my tarot deck as I was flying out the door, and we sat across from each other. Very young woman with her pad of paper in front of her, very serious, and she said, she was prepared now to act like a reporter and ask me a bunch of questions. And I said, the best way for you to really understand the tarot is, to have a reading. And I said, I brought my cards. I'll do a reading for you if you're open to that. And she said, oh, I'm kind of scared of that, quite honestly, Kathleen. I'm a little too scared. I said, I promise I won't tell you anything frightening. It'll just be kind of fun. And she said, well, okay. She was sort of nervous. So I did the reading for her, and she was very excited by the end of the reading. And as we were walking out the door, she said, oh, Kathleen, this was so fabulous. And she said, I want to send a photojournalist to take some pictures of you to go with the article if you would think that was okay. And I said, oh, sure, he'd come to my house and, take some photos and whatever. And so he did, and they did this. It was a big article. It was a whole front page of sort of the magazine section, the Saturday, big insert. Right. So huge. And I was going to be teaching a couple of little classes, and I thought this would be great for a couple of things. I thought it would be great for the website. Oh, boy, and now my brother's website would actually get people visiting it. And I was teaching a couple of classes at the local community center, and I thought this would be great. It will fill those little classes. Well, it was unbelievable. They had me, the poor library, they had me in a room that probably would have held 25 people. And everybody after this, the Monday morning, the community center phones were ringing off the hook for signing up for my class, which normally would house about 10. And the library called me in a panic and said, Kathleen, our phones have not stopped ringing all morning, and we're going to have to move you into the auditorium. And she said, we got to bring in extra staff to handle the lineups. And, it was unreal. It was hilarious, actually. But that's the change that's happened too in attitudes about psychic ability. And so anyway, that's when, so here, like I said, I'd had this sort of day life, which, I was known as a kind of, like academic social worker kind of person,
right.
to holy, and now all these people that knew me who didn't know what I did in my little private secret time were now astounded to find out that, what? Kathleen is a psychic and a tarot reader. How bizarre is that? I even had a professor call me and say, one of my MA profs called me and said, what kind of get-up is this? I said, oh, don't give me that crap. What kind of get-up do you have there in that nice big corner office? So, yes, that's when there was a head-on collision, and my two lives came together.
I know that part of your focus, if not most of your focus, is on psychic ability with women. Is there a difference in gender? Have you seen a difference? Is one gender more open or less open, or more receptive or less receptive to this?
Well, this is a perfect example of, what I said about being open and accepting, the whole thing around women's intuition, right? And so women have always had that little bit of license in their identity that women's intuition is kind of spooky and sort of understood to be, woo, 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 kind of lunar,
Right.
So that, and it's okay for women to be like that. Whereas men are, they're supposed to be linear and logical and intellectual. And so when a male says, I'm a psychic, everybody says, why, are you gay? There's this whole sort of weird, this is a gender issue, right? So again, I feel sorry for men because they have to, psychic men have that whole kind of gay thing that they have to, oh no, I'm straight too, but I'm psychic and I'm a man, do they make those brands? I mean, Right. So I think for males in our culture, it can be really difficult to access the psychic ability and then to come out about it. To be, really public about it. Don't you think so?
Ray, I'll let you follow this one up.
And I think so. And I've actually had this theory, and I brought it up to Kevin. We've talked a little bit about it. I happen to be gay myself, and a number of other males that I know that are also have psychic abilities, and even people we see on TV and some authors and whatnot, often happen to be gay men.
Yeah,
and I've wondered if there was
because
something.
Only because you're allowed, you have access that, you've kind of crossed that barrier of expectation, right? So you've been able to accept yourself on many levels. I think once you have accepted yourself fully, no matter what it is about yourself you're accepting, then accepting yourself as a psychic is, that's just another, it's kind of notch in there, isn't it?
Right.
So I think that has a lot to do with it. It's expectation again. Perfect.
Yeah, so I'm in complete agreement, and it makes absolute sense to me. And again, Kevin and I mentioned that to him before. I tend to know a lot more male LGBT men, or I guess it would be GBT men, who are also psychic.
Yeah, and I do too. I would have my classes had mostly women and a couple of gay men in my class. It was always like that. Once in a while, there'd be a straight man in there, but poor guy, he'd be 1 in 10.
Yeah. We'll have to do some scholarly research on that.
I don't think there's any difference at all between men and women in terms of capability, for sure. Yeah.
But your explanation, Kathleen, makes so much sense. I mean, it's so true in every point. That's obviously coming from a different perspective than Ray with this, I can certainly see this. I mean, this is what you said is very, very true. And I'm trying to think, Ray, if we know anybody. I think the only other mediums that we know locally are all female, but
right.
The logic to it is certainly there. I mean, I guess illogic or logic, however you want to look at it, but the explanation is certainly there.
Yeah. And
that definitely makes sense. Kathleen, I had one other question for you, and on your website, as I was looking through, and you list a lot of the things that you do, and we talked a little bit about the tarot, we talked a little bit about the psychic abilities, but you also have dream interpretation on there. And that's something that I'm fascinated with, and it's one of those things we've held off doing a show on because I want to make sure we get the right person on there. So what do you do with dream interpretation? How do you is it just like it sounds, or is there more to it than?
Well, I've been interested in that started out with a really keen interest in the writings of Carl Jung. And my master's is in that, by the way. That's what the psychology of religion means, actually. I majored, if you could call it a major, but it's really a majoring in Jung. And so I've studied Jung a lot, and probably spent a good 10 years studying Jung. And, of course, through that study, wandered into dreams, because dreams are, critical piece of the whole Jungian perspective. So that's where it all began back in, again, I would say mid-'80s, that I started really being interested in dream interpretation. And so, it's hard to describe that journey. It started in Jung, and then I wandered into a number of different sort of dream interpreters' work that I really liked, and then I offered a class at the same time as I was going to teach my first tarot class. Actually, I also offered a dream interpretation class. It was an evening class, and it was really interesting. My tarot classes would would attract easily 18 to 20 people, but my dream interpretation, the poor thing limped along. I was lucky to get 5 people signing up. It was really surprising to me how few people are interested in learning how to interpret their dreams. That surprises me.
Absolutely. I think that's very, very true. Ray had mentioned that we both have a background in education. I'm a high school teacher. Ray is an administrator in the high school system. And I've taught psychology. I taught it a number of years, and I used to do a little very, very basic stuff on dream interpretation. And like you said, it would hold the kids' interest for about a day, and that was about it. That always amazed me because I find it fascinating, and I had at the time what I considered a very scary experience. But I think you'll know when I say what this is. I had a visitation dream when I was younger. I was visited by a grandfather who was deceased, and it was the only time in my entire life before that and up to this point where I woke up, sat straight up in bed, was sweating, heart beating 100 miles an hour, and it was like I was just there. And that's one of my first experiences that got me interested in the paranormal, but it happened to be through a visitation dream.
Wow.
And I know that's probably a little different than actually interpreting a regular dream, but along those same lines, it was pretty intense.
Yeah, and I do think the veil. I always tell my clients that the veil is thin in dreams. Like if you're going to be able to access someone on the other side, it will likely come in a dream first. Because I think that is the easiest time to sort of make that connection. But yeah, I think dream interpretation. I think dream interpretation is really critical. If you ignore your dreams all your life, you're ignoring, so much. Again, a part of yourself that's really vital. I mean, people will, take the advice of some random nobody on the internet
Sure.
But they won't listen to their own dreams, their own sort of inner wisdom, access to the most profound, objective, wise counsel that we all have within us, and people think that's kind of, it's just a dream, right? It surprises me. It surprised me. 'Cause for 20 years I've been amazed. So in 1997, I had I sort of designed a tool to help you interpret your dreams. They were called Dream Quest cards, and it was a series of cards that could be used in a dream group. So I also have a dreams dictionary online because after publishing this set of cards, then we got on the shopping channel, believe it or not.
Right.
It's very wild, but we did get on the shop, and the shopping channel said we would be happy to take it to the because it was shown here in Canada, and then the shopping channel said we'd be happy to take it to the States and UK, but we would need to see something else with it. So how about if you throw in a dreams dictionary with it? Then it might be sort of a bigger thing or whatever. So believe it or not, I sat down and pumped out that dreams dictionary in about 4 months. I just worked like a maniac. And by the time it was done, they had changed staff at the shopping channel, and now the new staff wasn't interested. So now I had this dreams dictionary. And it wasn't published, and then years later, it was just years later and years ago, my webmaster said, well, if you've got that dreams dictionary, it seems kind of silly just to have it sitting around doing nothing. After all, why don't we turn it into a website? So that's what we did, and so it now is online, and figured, well, it's out there anyway, people can use it. And I also have a model, so it's dreamsdictionary.org, and then you can use the Dreams Dictionary, but there's also a model in there for if you want to form your own dream study group and how sort of to do that, and that's from experience. And so I did dream study groups over the years. Every once in a while I just get hungry to do it, and I was able to scare to the group 5 or 6 people, and they're so much fun. It's really the best way to explore your dreams is really in a group, because you listen to other people telling their dreams, and then you work with the dream, and so you're not just interpreting your own, but working with other people's as well. And after a while, you sort of get to know how to do it. There's a knack to it, and it's really hard to describe. It's sort of a combination of intuition and feeling and experience, and I can't even really describe it, but you will get to a point where you can listen to someone's dream and you know what it means. If someone can tell me a dream, and I'm pretty good at knowing what that dream is telling you.
Right.
I can do it pretty quickly. And I can't really explain it's just from studying it and working with so many people in their dreams, but the work has certainly not in any way discouraged me from seeing its importance. I think dreams are really, really important. I think they'll tell you if you're sick. I mean, they'll tell you if you've got a terminal illness, long before it'll be diagnosed. It'll tell you if your loved one has a terminal illness long before it's diagnosed. It'll give you guidance on your life purpose, why you're here, access to the beyond, your own psychic ability. I think if you work with your dreams, your psychic ability will develop. That's a royal road to developing it, actually, I think. So, I'm big on that.
So, Ray, if you have any questions, please jump in, because I have another one. But go ahead. I don't want to
go for
take any time. All right. And actually, it's probably a question for both of you. And I know, Ray, you and I have talked about this before. But jumping back quick to the psychic abilities, Ray, we often talk with Ray about how he's able to quote unquote turn it on and turn it off. Is that something that, Kathleen, you had to also learn how to do so it didn't overwhelm you?
I think because I figured out that I had it quite young, I think I learned young how to turn it off and turn it on. I was actually able to do that. And so I didn't have to be trained in that, and I never had any sort of fear about it. Like, I have a memory. This is a really, really early memory. I was still in my crib, and I couldn't walk, but I could stand. So I can remember standing in my crib and holding on to the bars and looking over at the bed where my parents slept. They slept in the same room as I did at that time. And I remember willing my father to get up and pick me up. And I didn't make any noise because I don't want to wake my mother up because it would annoy my mother, and I knew that. She'd get mad if I disturbed her sleep. Whereas my father was never mad about that. He would get up, pick me up, and cuddle me and walk around with me, and he was just as happy to have the experience as I was. So I know I willed him quietly to do that, and he would do it. So knowing that I could do things like that, I think, I don't know, I mean, I would almost dare to say that maybe I was born knowing that. That's how long it's been with me. But I really assumed everybody did it. Because, you see, I made that connection with my father. And I do believe to this day, mind you, that my father's passed on, but I do think he had that ability as well. I think we had the same ability. Yeah. Now,
have you, I assume probably at some point in your career since you've been doing this so long, but have you ever worked with a paranormal investigative group before?
No, I have not.
You haven't? Oh, okay.
No, I've never done that. Have you?
Well, yes. I mean, our team we have Ray, plus we also have another psychic medium who comes in, and I was leading into the question. I didn't know if you believed that you could have individuals who, I hate to use this word because I know it's not really true, but who are stuck here, who need to be moved on, and this kind of bridges that gap between paranormal and maybe the actual psychic science of it. What's your feeling on that? Is that something that
I completely agree with that. Have you read Dr. Carl Wickland's work? Have you ever heard of Dr. Carl Wickland? Carl Wickland was you would really love his work. Unfortunately, he only wrote 2 books. He was around in the 1920s, and he was a psychiatrist that practiced, I believe he started practicing in New York. And he married a very gifted medium. And they moved to California, I guess, fairly early in his career, and he worked, of course, part of his work was in a mental hospital, and he would take patients who were classified as hopeless, and he would bring them home. He would invite them to his spirit group. He held spirit groups in evenings with his wife, and they would have the patient, everybody would enter kind of a trance, and then he would, with his wife acting as the medium, they would have the patient go into kind of a trance, and then his wife was able to speak with the spirit who was in sort of plaguing or inhabiting that person. So what Wickland said was that he believed that most mental illness was actually exactly that. And so they would help the spirit to move on, to move forward in their development and leave this poor person alone. And the patient would make a full recovery and would be then released from the mental hospital and go on to live their life just fine. So he had a number of, there was a few case studies. He's a fascinating read. His first book was 30 Years Among the Dead, and the next one was A Gateway to Understanding. I think you'd really love those books.
Yeah, that sounds. I will absolutely check that out.
Mm-hmm.
That's wow. So that leads me into my next question: is what do you believe in ghosts? And if so, what do you think they are? And this is a topic that we bat around constantly on our team, and I think we all have very different ideas of what they may be. What's your take on that?
Well, I believe that they are souls that are unable to progress. So they're and well, I think there's probably a number of reasons why. It could be just unbelievable regret. They just they got to the other side and realized that they just lived their life completely wrong. Which, I mean, that can happen to anybody, right? Or it could be that their souls were just really sick, and they are unable to. Yeah, they're just unable to. They may have had concepts of the spirit world, for example, that were completely wrong. And when they passed on to the other side, it was such a shock that they tried to keep coming back. and that brings me actually to another point, which is this whole business around reincarnation, which I am completely against, by the way. I don't believe there's such a thing as reincarnation. I think we're incarnated once. I think that's plenty, to be honest. And I believe that's a misinterpretation of a spiritual writing. And I think that for souls who believe in reincarnation, they believe that they can come back, and they may get stuck, keep trying to come back. That could also be a possibility.
Okay.
So I think there's a number of possibilities, reasons why people, but I don't think it is our natural way. Like I don't think, I don't think, I guess I like to believe that when I pass on, I'll keep progressing. I'll keep learning. I'll be in a new environment and be happy to keep moving forward. I really hope I don't, get stuck in a place where I keep trying to come back. And I do think too that some people mourn so deeply, probably because they don't believe in an afterlife, and so when a loved one passes on, their mourning is so, they're inconsolable. They can't get past it, and that mourning may, in fact, drag that spirit back. And I often think that when we're able to hear, mourn, and move on, it allows those loved ones that have passed on to keep moving forward. No, we're going to be okay and move up, keep going. Yeah. So there may be very deep mourning of a loved one that keeps bringing that one back. There was someone I spoke with recently who said she was in France at one of those massive grave sites. I forget the name of it. It was one of the really famous ones in France. And she said she had an absolutely terrifying experience when she walked over the hill with all these crosses. All of a sudden, she said she just felt this she was just overwhelmed by all the spirits. And the sadness and she said she could see the bombs going off and these soldiers and the terror, and she said the intensity of that emotion that was there was just, it almost made her faint. So there again, there's soldiers who may have, if you suddenly died like that in such a traumatic event, maybe that also would mean your soul keeps, sort of somehow stuck to that particular location. I don't know. It's so interesting that you say that, because to make an incredibly long story short, we do a lot of investigating at a local mansion in Syracuse,
that was home to a very prominent abolitionist family back in the 1800s. And it's rumored that this house was part of the Underground Railroad. And when we've been going there for probably a little over a year, off and on, doing investigations maybe once a month. But maybe after the fourth or fifth time we were there, Ray started to pick up on an individual who he believes may have been a runaway slave or may have been attached to the family somehow. And he actually is still in communication with Ray off and on. Ray, I don't want to tell too much of the story for you, but if you want to jump in and...
No, go for it. That's fine.
Oh, okay. And what you were saying about how kind of holding on to that emotion, that was the impression that Ray got about this individual, that he kept coming to him very upset about something that had happened in the house that he felt guilty for. We were never able to discern that 100%, but that seemed to be a very repetitive message that he kept sending to Ray. So that connection is, I absolutely get that because we've run into that before.
Yeah, that intensity of emotion and fear, and it's just kind of permeates, and so I don't know if the soul, if the body's sudden violent death, and in the midst of so many around them as well, if that energy gets kind of locks them in that geographical spot, So I'm not sure, but certainly I absolutely do believe that there are souls that, for whatever reason, they get locked here, and I think it must be very torturous for them, because I don't think that's a natural state of being.
Yeah, and that's certainly the impression I think that this individual gave to Ray for a long time. Would you agree, Ray?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of confusion on both ends, I think, and it took me some time to really make sense of what he was trying to explain, what he was trying to get across to us.
Yes.
And actually, activity kind of subsided once I was able to make sense of what he was trying to share.
Yes. Yes, I think once they can, that's another point, that once they are able to make a connection and have their voice, so-called voice heard, that's the point. And then they, I don't know, that seems to free them even unto itself in some way. Yeah. Like once someone has said, yes, I hear what you have to say, and I hear you, and so it's like a validation of existence as well. Like the spirit can say, okay, they can hear me. I still do exist. I may have passed on, and I'm in a different kind of dimension, but I do exist. Right?
Right. Yeah.
So that validation enables them then to grab a hold of now who they are, so then they can move forward. That makes sense. Yeah.
When you're doing your readings, Kathleen, have you ever had? And I know that obviously for confidentiality reasons you can't disclose names or anything like that. But what has been your biggest to you? Like, oh wow, I'm even surprised at that kind of moment when you were doing a reading. Did you have anyone that you just kind of blew you away that even surprised you when you came up with?
I have that all the time. I do. I confess. It happens to me all the time. I'm always surprised. I don't know where it comes from. I guess that's why I don't know why you know, I don't remember what I say most of the time, by the way. I mean, I have worked with so many people, as you can imagine, over the years that
Sure.
I haven't got a clue what I say half the time. And people will say to me, you know, Kathleen, you told me this. I mean, believe it or not, I actually do have people that say to me, you told me this 8 years ago. Like, if you think I remember that, like, really?
Right.
I don't remember what I said last week. So,
right.
but every once in a while, it's true. I've got a couple of stories that are probably that stand out to me anyway. One was a woman asked me when her mother was going to die, and I mean, not in a bad way. Her mother was quite sickly, and
Right.
They were kind of, the whole family was sort of thinking, just die, please.
Right. Yeah.
So, she said to me, when is she going to die? And I said, now, where this came from, like I said, I have no idea. I said June 18th.
Right.
Well, she called me completely freaked out on June 19th to say that her mother had, the day before, June 18th, fallen down the stairs, broke her clavicle bone, went to the hospital and died. And she said, my family, I just want you to know, Kathleen, my family is completely freaked out.
Right.
You know, she never came to see me again. You would think that would have encouraged her. But in fact, it scared them all so badly, I never heard from any of them again. Another one that was sort of bizarre was a woman who wrote to me about a year ago. She sent me an email, and she said, I just have to tell you this story. She said, oh, you probably don't remember me, and I didn't. But she said, you had told me years ago that one day I would be married with a couple of kids living in Hawaii. And she said, I at the time you said it, Kathleen, I thought you were completely bonkers. Like, there was no way.
Right.
I mean, I would have done this reading in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada, you know, so Hawaii was really off the wall. And she said, and here I am, just want to let you know I'm living in Hawaii with 2 kids.
Wow.
So that was very weird. So every once in a while, something very specific like that will come out. And I often think to myself, why would they have needed to hear that at that moment? Like, what was it why did Spirit feel that it was so important that they had to have that specific piece of information ahead of time? Like, you know, sort of interesting to think that was part of their destiny to hear that ahead of time. It's like a dream, really. You know, you have these dreams, right? And why do we need to know some things ahead of time? I'm not sure. But I do have things happen like that, I would say, on a regular basis, just not maybe so dramatic, you know.
Sure. Now, I did read on your webpage that you said you don't reveal negative information unless the client specifically asks for it. Is that correct?
It's more the other way around. If someone says to me, don't tell me anything bad, you know, don't tell me anything, then I say, well, we don't have anything more to say to each other. No, I'm only kidding. I'd love to scare people like that. Right. That's my wicked sense of humor. Sometimes people will say, I don't want to hear anything that, you know, is really bad. Then I'm very, very careful. And then I'll say to them, though, I warn you that your reading is probably going to sound pretty general then, you know, because I'm having to filter what I'm going to say. And I do feel that to honor, if you truly believe in your gift and you're working with your gift, to truly honor that, you're going to have to suck it up and be the messenger of bad news sometimes. You know, it's not all good. We don't live, you know, happily ever after. We don't have those kind of lives. I think it's kind of nice sometimes to have a heads up. It doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be able to change it, but I think it's kind of nice to have a little warning. I kind of like those. I've had those in my personal life, and I've appreciated having that heads up ahead of time.
Right.
But no, it's not all glamorous, and you can't.
Right.
I don't think I teach that to my client. I'm teaching students. I'd say, now be careful. Don't sugarcoat or be a Pollyanna in your readings. And I know some practicing psychics will go down that road of being all light and all that jazz. But I don't think you're honoring your true gift if you do that, and you're going to pay a price. It's going to get so watered down that at some point it's going to be useless to you.
Yep, very true.
Nothing comes without a cost. You can't be the messenger of good news all the time, right?
That's right. Absolutely.
That's what I feel. Yeah.
Believe it or not, we are almost out of time, which is hard to believe because this has been absolutely wonderful. In our short hour here, I've learned so much stuff. We always like to give. No, that's fine. I would rather listen because that's how you learn. So, we always like to give people a chance to go ahead and make sure people are aware of their website or how they get in contact with you. Now, obviously, you being in Canada, us being in New York, can you do these readings via the phone or via, Skype on the computer if anybody in our area wants to get in touch with you?
Oh, for sure. For sure. I have, there's a few websites. I have a website dedicated to tarot, which is tarotbykathleen.com. And I also have a YouTube channel. I have a number of videos. If you just want to watch some videos, I've done a number of lectures, as you mentioned, on tarot and psychic ability in women and that kind of thing. I also have a psychiccanada.com site, which is more kind of psychic in general. There's my Dreams Dictionary website if you want to learn how to. It's more of a teaching tool, teaching people how to interpret their dreams as opposed to just giving, your typical kind of dreams dictionary. It's really, I see it as a tool to learn how to do it yourself. What else do I have out there? There's a couple of. I don't have a blog anymore. I used to blog, but now I write articles. I write articles for a website called unexplainedmysteries.com, which is out of Scotland, actually. And that's a great website to go and investigate. They have lots of articles in there. And I have a column in there, actually, so I've got quite a number of articles in there. But, yes, I do readings by phone and Skype and in person here in Victoria.
That's great. So the best way is going to be via your website would be to get in touch with you if anybody in our area would like to initially contact you that way. Well, excellent. We'd love to have you back on someday. If you'd like to come back on the show. So great.
Sure.
So again, thank you so much. It's been wonderful speaking to you, and we really appreciate you taking the time to call in and talk to us.
It's been nice meeting you both.
Yes, thank you, Kathleen.
Thanks for doing such great work.
No problem. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you. Same to you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. That was fun, Ray.
Yeah, that was good. I learned a couple of things, and again, as always, when we're talking to people, it kind of validates some of our own experiences.
Without a doubt. And yet another person, I love having people on the show that really are able to communicate very well what they do. And I think Kathleen was fantastic at that.
She's been doing
she's been doing it for so long that it's just obviously second nature to her, and she does it as her career now. But also very, very positive about what she does, which is always nice to hear as well. So that's it for this week, everybody, and we'll wrap up. And Ray and I have to go check on election results here in the U.S. if you're listening from Canada.
That's right.
But catch up with us next week, same time, and on Blog Talk. So we'll be seeing you then. Have a good night, everybody.
Yeah. Good night.
When you don't go to Geico.com, car insurance can be confusing. Like Swedish techno confusing.
bark, bark, meow, meow. Dance with me, purple cow. Bark, bark, meow, meow. Ooh, you lovely cow.
Geico makes it easy. With 24/7 access, all you have to do is go to geico.com and you could save money on car insurance. It just makes sense. Unlike,
Dance with me, purple cow. I like your moves.
UPS is now hiring part-time package handlers and seasonal driver helpers throughout Syracuse. Package handlers receive competitive pay, great benefits, and can also graduate debt-free with up to $25,000 in tuition assistance. Driver helpers also receive competitive pay and get picked up along their route every day. No license required. Apply now at jobs-ups.com/radio. That's jobs-ups.com/radio. A great job and excellent benefits are in one package, delivered by UPS. Get there at jobs-ups.com/radio.